humans never failed to surprise us, especially with innovation. However, we will be talking about a different type of innovation, Islam's God, or Allah's innovation. In what exactly? In the methods he came up with to torture what Islam calls sinners for everything bad, according to him, that they have done. If you follow a religion, most likely your God has his own ways too. Anyway, let's dig into this and see how creative Muhammad was. Allah is. Judgment Day. According to Islam, after death, our bodies and souls are sent to a world called Al-Barzakh, and when Judgment Day arrives, all people will rise and go upstairs to meet God and be judged by him. I am sure people with "only God can judge me" Facebook bios are looking forward to this day. After judgment, by the way, according to Islam, the majority of residents in hell will be women, and after deciding who goes to hell or heaven, you'd think sinners will just burn and that's it, right? Wrong. Or else there wouldn't be a video about this. In Islam, God apparently has his own methods of torturing people. Let's look at some of the most brutal ones applied in hell, or what Muslims call Jahannam, skin replacement. I wish I was talking about cosmetic surgery done by one of the Kardashians, but this is one of God's most ruthless forms of torturing someone to make sure they are in as constant pain for as long as they are in hell. Could be for eternity depending on the sin, like dying as a non-believer. Here, God waits until all the skin melts off the bones, and while the skin vanishes, God keeps replacing it with fresh new skin, so the person is always in constant burning torment without dying. It is like being surrounded by the walls of death, but not being able to touch them. Here, the loop starts and could never end. Yikes. Food and beverages. You'd think kale would be a part of the menu served in Allah's hell, but apparently, there is much worse than that. Inmates of hell are in a constant state of hunger and thirst, so they are willing to try anything to feed these instincts. God here deceives them by showing them a fruit called dari, which looks like pomegranate, or a fig, which will bait the hungry to try to eat it, and the second they swallow it, a very rough surface full of thorns pops out, tearing the person's digestive path into pieces, causing a tremendous amount of agony. Another type of food God was very generous enough to provide is called zakum, which is a tree that springs from the bottom of hell and carries heads of the devils which hell inmates are forced to eat. Once the appetite of the sinners is satisfied, the fruit in their bellies shakes like burning oil. Not to mention that there are inmates that not only are forced to eat this, in another form of torture, they are forced to drink the boiling oil, directly melting their insides out. Other Muslims say boiling water is used instead of oil. Do I really need to explain any further how painful that sounds? Iron hooks, fire masks, and mountains? On the lowest level of hell, the sinners will be bound to their necks and their necks to their legs while lying on their faces. They will be crushed by mountains or crushed with the hands of the angels of hell, which are made of iron. Optimus Prime beating kind of style. And although Jahannam is so big that it would take a stone 70 years to reach the bottom of it, inmates of hell still try to escape. Can you blame them? And when they do, they are always caught by the guards with iron hooks of fire, which they are dragged with by the neck while having fire masks on. Is there more? Well, yeah, way more. One of the methods that women specifically will be tortured in hell with, according to Islam, is that they will be hung by their breasts while being hit with whips of fire or being dragged while tied with fire and scorpions covering them. Another form of punishment, according to Muhammad's version, is that the woman having the face of a dog while fire is entering her body from her posterior, while angels are beating her with iron rods or laying stones on the women's shoulders, which are so hot that it will melt the skin on their shoulder to the bone. You can freeze too. Believe it or not, God was merciful enough to not only burn you to a fire that took 3,000 years of burning and feeding to be ready for sinners, but also to expose inmates to the coldest ways of punishment, pun intended. Zamharir, as it is called in Islam, is an extremely cold place in hell that the pain in it is so immense that inmates would beg the guards every time to be moved back to the fire part of hell because it is less painful, kinda like living in Canada. It is so cold that the cracking sound of some inmates' bones is heard by other inmates in the fire part of hell. while others will either have their bodies torn apart or even burnt due to the severity of the coldness there. Now that we showed you how merciful Islam's God is, which other religion's hell would you like to know about?